M113K swaps in a 560 SEC or SEL. I don't like saying that. You know, there's some words that I just don't say. I try to stay away from using certain types of four-letter words. There's also a thing that starts with a C that people smoke. I don't say that word because I want society to forget it exists. You know, it's kind of a weird thing that I do. Like if I want a word to go away and forget about it, I just don't say it. So engine swap is one of those words that I try not to say too much because it's super cringe. And you know, it's really funny because the people that do this kind of crap, I'm not saying they're bad people, but they are a little, to me, like, I'm not going to, look, I can't judge you because, like, some people might think some things I do are weird, but a lot of the people that are into that stuff, like, they do some really cringy stuff. Like, the guy that wants an M116 swap or M117 swap for an M113, you know, supercharged engine in their 126 might also have like a purple vape, and they might, you know, use some recreational drugs, and you know, they may be more interested in their Instagram than actually like finding personal success with relationships with real people. I'm just saying that it's too bad that these really great, well-made cars have become noticed by people that have more interest in people following them on social media than actually maintaining and preserving the car the right way. Now, I know, again, there are going to be people in the comments that say, well, you can't tell people what to do with their own cars. And I go, well, that's true. I can't tell people what to do with their own cars, but I can have an opinion about it, and I can try to point them in the right direction, you know. And I don't know. It's funny because I don't understand the class of person that would want to modify one of these things. But in order to stick to the academics of the video and to make sure that we're focusing on the point and not the person, or the car and not the person, I want to talk about a couple of things to possibly dissuade people from doing this to their SEC. Number one, you can't get control units for an M113K, and you need specialized knowledge to diagnose it. Now, if you want to go buy some of the items like the thing that controls the engine control module, if you want to, you know, I don't even know what modules these have, but they use these CAN wiring harnesses to communicate with things like the SAM, or on 500Es we had an e-gas module. I think they replaced that with an integrated module that controlled idle speed and cruise control and fuel injection. What I'm saying is these modules, when they finally burn up and die, are not going to be available for Mercedes. Now, because they have chips on them and they're not really that well made, you get limited time with these modules. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go to Haltech and get a standalone ECU that you could plug into your laptop and do specialized tuning for it. I mean, that stuff's always going to be available, right? But at the end of the day, if your car gets zapped by lightning and you're not really sure like where to begin because you've had a major electrical failure and you don't have access to a laptop that has star diagnostic systems on it, or you don't have access to a person that knows how to use SDS, you're really dealing with a lot of major issues. Now let's juxtapose this with the stock M117 engine in your 560 SEC. These cars will run even when they have stupid people working on them. Their electrical systems and what their engines actually do are separated because at the time Mercedes engineers did not trust electronics. They learned a hard lesson with D-Jetronic. When you depend on the control unit to make the engine run, you will inevitably be let down. And from what I understand with things like the module shortage or ECUs frying themselves or poorly manufactured wiring harnesses, here in the modern era, things really aren't that different. I can't think of how many times people have called me complaining because a Mercedes dealership or Mercedes tech had said, well, it's the computer. We can't get one. They're not available right now. Or it's the computer. It's going to be $5,000 to fix. Or it's the computer. 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 The key word in it's the computer is computer, because computer has failed and now nothing works. And that's my main argument against the M113K swap. Most people who've brought us 560s that were not running right, or 420s, bring us those cars and they say the car's running a little funny. I find out it is a dead KE control unit. I send it out to be repaired at Systems Consulting or at, I don't know, at my buddy Chris at cruisecontrolrepair.com. And they'll look at these things and because they don't have like a chip and they're not coded to a security module and this and that, they'll look at it, they'll replace some resistors, repair some solder joints, and then they'll send it back to me. It'll work just fine because it does the basic thing of correcting the mixture to make the oxygen sensor happy and make the engine run pretty well. You know, people will rave. Now, I know a pro about these M113K swaps is the fuel economy. The engines run ultra lean. They'll get over 20 miles per gallon. But if you can afford a $50,000 engine swap and a 560 SEC on top of that, I don't see that as an advantage. Like, who cares? You know, my wife has a Camry that gets 20-something miles per gallon. It's probably just as fast as my 450 SLC, if not a little faster. If I wanted a car that went fast and got 30 miles per gallon, I'd get a Camry. But I want a car that will always run, that I can work on. And I can't do that with the Camry. The Camry will not always be here. The SLCs will always be here. Now, this leads to the last thing. People are like, well, you can't really get more than 300 horsepower out of a M117 engine. Their stock power rating is like 235, 240. And M117K makes like 450 horsepower. Sure, like I understand the appeal of wanting more power. But I don't understand why you have to ruin the SEC to get that level of power. Like, why does it matter? Why not just go buy an R129? Why not just go buy a CL55? Like, why not just go buy the crappy new car to get the power boost? I don't understand why you have to take something that's really well made and force it to conform to your ideal of what you think it should be in terms of power or performance. Like, it seems like needless destruction. It's sort of like saying, well, here's the Mona Lisa, but I think she would look better if we painted a tattoo of like a little teardrop under her face, you know? Now, most people would say, well, yeah, but they made 100,000 SECs, right? But each one of them is unique and each one of them is special. If you don't think that, then you're not really a true classic Mercedes enthusiast, are you? Because here at Pierre Hedary's, we operate under the premise that each car is different. I've never put two cars together, no matter how much I hated them, side by side. And there's been some cars in here that I've really hated. I've had my come to Jesus moments with. I've never put two cars side by side and said these are both exactly the same car. They're going to behave the same way. They may have had similar problems, but the outcome, the way the car runs and feels after 40 years is different. It's like a bottle of wine. You subject it to different heat and temperature and humidity. And maybe on the day the grapes are harvested in this one, the wind was blowing from the north. And maybe on the day the grapes are harvested in this one, they were blowing from the south. And they all create these subtle differences. And part of that extends to the way the car runs. I don't so much care about the way the car looks. When I hit the key, I want to hear that beautiful M117 coming to life. And no bolt of electricity or overvoltage situation or lack of parts availability can take that away from me. That's all I'm saying. That's why I love those engines, because they just run and run and run and run and run. And no, you can't justify it by saying, oh, well, these are great modern engines, you know. Modern engines suck. Like, do you guys go on, even people who say, oh, the M113K is so reliable and it's such a great engine. No, all engines wear out. They all have timing chain parts that wear out. They all have head gaskets that will eventually leak. They all have valves that will eventually burn. They all have pistons and rings that will eventually wear out. They all have bottom ends that will eventually go. That's not true. When the 560s were 20 years old, they didn't wear out. Nothing was worn out. Valve guides weren't worn out. Chains weren't worn out unless you were a traveling salesman and you drove all the time. Things just didn't wear out. You see the cars we get in these days with original chains and guides and cam oiler tubes and spark plug wires and crankshaft seals. You know, when those engines were 22 years old, they didn't wear out either. You know, most mechanics didn't even open the valve covers. They're like, it runs great, you know, needs spark plugs. So all engines do wear out. All right, so I've talked long enough about this. If you enjoy this video, please tell people in the comments who didn't to go screw themselves. Maybe that's not very nice of me. Please try to lovingly and gently correct their flawed thinking in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next video. I'm looking forward to any backlash I get. I don't care because I'm doing it every day. All the people in the comments, 95% of them, I'm not saying those 5% of you, 95% of them have not experienced and suffered through what I've suffered through. So I've earned the right to say it. Okay, I've been doing it 20 years. I know I sound like an old man. I've never said that in any of my other videos before, but I'm telling you, I've purchased my opinion with blood, sweat, and tears. That's all.